Hey guys, Adrenaline Junkie here. Today's video is not going to be a ride video, it's going to be a little different, but we're going to address an important topic. Today we're going to talk about how to buy a used razor. People ask me all the time, should I buy new? Should I buy used? Which model should I buy? Those questions, you can't really answer them. There's so many variables, but what we'll do is we'll discuss some of the common topics surrounding this. It's one of the most common things I'm asked. What do I need to look out for when I'm buying a new razor? What do I need to look out for when I'm buying a used razor? Which model is best for me? So, first we're gonna quickly address the model issue. There's multiple models of razors now. Anything from a 900 trail to a 570, a 1000 XP, a Turbo S, a Turbo XP, a Pro XP, a Pro XP Ultimate. How do you choose which one you need? First of all, what's your budget? Second of all, what do you intend to do? If you intend to do jumping, duning, stuff like that, that's where you need the power, that's where you like the turbo. If you ride on trails that are restricted to 50 inches, for example, then obviously you're gonna need a trail model because these machines won't fit on it. If you do a mix of trail riding and high speed, maybe a little bit of short course, stuff like that, then that's where the decision gets a little tricky because you need to decide what's most important to you. In a nutshell, I'm gonna tell you, if you're trail riding and you're just trail riding and you're not setting land speed records and you want a reliable machine at a decent budget, then look no further than a 9000S or a 1000S. I love the 900S. It's probably one of the most reliable platforms out there. Good bang for buck, decent power, great handling characteristics on the trail. It's little, it's nimble, yet it's not small enough that it's tippy or underpowered. 900S versus 1000S, really, it's up to you. The price difference isn't huge. The performance difference isn't huge. You can make that decision. Is it worth the extra bang for buck for a 1000S? Sure, a lot of guys will say you always want to get as much as you can up front. Now, if you're trail riding and your budget's a little bigger and you want a little bit more suspension travel, then I always tell people, overall, for mixed use, I really feel that out of all the razors, the 1000 XP is the best bang for buck. Performance-wise, power-wise, suspension-wise, looks-wise, aftermarket support, all that is awesome on the 1000 XP chassis. It's pretty good at everything. It does well on trails, it does well crawling around, it does well doing hill climbs, it does well ripping around even on high speed tracks, stuff like that. You can air it out. It's comfortable, it's got loads of jam, always a good choice. Now, if your budget's a little higher and you want those high horsepower numbers, if you want to really air it out hard, if you really want to go really fast through the trails, if you need a little bit more suspension, if you want to go duning, then basically you're going to be choosing a turbo model. You're either going to choose yourself a Razor XP Turbo or a Turbo S, and now you could probably even get into a Razor XP, a Razor Pro XP or a Pro Ultimate. The big decision in all these turbo models is what's your budget and what's your end goal. If you're duning or if you're just high speed riding on big wide open trails, then the Turbo S is a monster. It's wide, it's stable, it's powerful, it's got wicked suspension. Now, if you want to do all that and still trail ride, then I would say maybe it's better to stick to one of the 64-inch models like a Razor XP Turbo, like the Fox edition that you see here. This is a 2017 turbo model. Now, if you want to do trail riding and then you want to spend a little bit more, if you want the live valve suspension and all the fanciest gizmos, then you're definitely going to go after the Pro XP Ultimate. We could get into a huge discussion for an hour plus just on this, so we'll save that for a future video. We're just going to kind of touch base here on the basics. You're going to leave me some comments and you guys can address what you really want to touch on in the future. I'll read through the comments and we'll put another video out there. So, synopsis. 50-inch trail models. Basically, I'd only ever get one if I was restricted to that size. The only two models I would fully recommend is a 60-inch sport model or a 64-inch XP model. If you're going bigger and there's no size restrictions on your trails and if it's not too tight and if you're duning and racing, then that's where the Turbo S comes in. So we're going to move on to talking about what you need to look out for in a used machine. Buying new You just go into the dealership, you pick what you want for the money you want, and you pick out, well, I always recommend buying the extended factory warranty. Always worth it. Polaris really stands behind their warranty, and I really think it pays off in the long run. Even if it's just in resale value in 2 or 3 years, when you got factory warranty, it really helps you sell the machine. It takes that it gives people peace of mind. So with that being said, you're buying new, you just go out there, you pick the color you like, you pick what's in stock, you set a budget, and you shop in that range. Buying used, you have to set kind of expectations on what you want in a certain price range. Set your price range and choose between a few model years. Now, if you're looking, which machines are the best to buy? You want a good trail machine on a budget, you're gonna go out, you're gonna get yourself a 2012 to 2014 900 XP. Still a very capable chassis, a little dated, but you can really pick them up for a good deal with quite a few modifications these days and still in pretty good shape if someone's taking care of it. You want to update the model, then I always say that you can't go wrong with a 1000 XP. So you go out, you buy yourself a 2014 to current 1000 XP. You can get one kitted out depending on where you are for a great deal, or you can find one that's near stock usually with low mileage and some factory warranty remaining, and then do what you want with it. A lot of the accessories you see on like this turbo model will basically be cross-platform for the 1000 XP, which is nice because the body itself is all the same. The difference is the drivetrain and the suspension components will be a little different, but a ton of the accessories like bumpers, windshields, roofs, all that is the same, which just extends the aftermarket. You get a lot more options. You got to remember, mileage, year, that's not the deciding factor in an off-road vehicle. It's not like you're buying your mom a Honda Accord to get groceries in. Mileage means nothing. I could destroy a machine like this in 5 minutes in 5 miles. Or I could drive a machine like this for 5,000 miles and it could be pristine because I maintain it and I use it properly. So don't ever get fooled by just hours and just mileage. Of course, higher mileage machines are going to have more use, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're more abused. A machine with 500 miles can have a bent frame and a blown engine. A machine with 5,500 miles could have a perfect engine, a perfect frame, and a ton of upgrades. So be very careful when you're buying used and make sure you do your homework. It's always nicer to buy from someone you know, knowing the history of the machine, even if it costs you a few bucks extra. Don't try to save $1,000 because oftentimes saving that $1,000 is going to cost you a lot more in the long run. You get what you pay for. If it's too good to be true, then it probably is. So let's get more specific. Regardless of whether you're looking at a 900 XP, a 900S, a 1000S, a RZR Turbo, a Turbo S, 1000 XP, it doesn't matter. You're going to look for some key things. Right away, you're just going to stand back and you're going to look at the machine and you're going to see, does it look straight? You're going to look at the front wheels. You're going to stand here and you're going to take a look at those front wheels and you're going to see, do they both stick out the same distance? Are they both aligned? You're going to take a look at it and you're going to see, is the camber out of whack on one of these wheels? You're going to round to the back and you're going to do the same thing. Does the camber look right? Is one of the wheels cocked in or something like that? You're going to look at the components and you're going to see, does it have aftermarket A-arms or stock A-arms? If you're buying a machine that's got 2,000-3,000 miles on it and it still has stock A-arms and there's no paint left on the bottom of those A-arms and there's a few dings and dents on them, I'll tell you, that's usually a really good sign. That means that whoever owned this might have put a lot of mileage on it, but probably never thrashed that machine really hard. A lot of you guys will know, stock A-arms aren't very strong. If someone's put 2,000 miles on a machine and it still has factory A-arms, then it's probably a pretty good sign that that person didn't beat the crap out of it. Now you show up to a machine and it looks like this. It's got aftermarket A-arms, it's got aftermarket axles, it's got aftermarket steering setup, bigger wheels, bigger tires. You don't, generally speaking, you put that stuff on a machine to use it. And when you build a machine like that, it puts more abuse on it, and you also go out expecting to abuse your machine more and conquer heavier obstacles. So with that being said, yeah, so that A-arm's not going to be bent. Those axles, they're probably going to be good. So now, aside from looking at the A-arms and the shocks and stuff like that, we're going to look further in. A-arms are easy to replace. Axles, they're easy to replace. Even a good aftermarket axle isn't huge money in comparison to this vehicle cost. So we're gonna come in here. So now we're gonna look here and we're gonna see, where does that A-arm connect to? We're gonna look at our suspension connection points. We're gonna look at all the locations that A-arm connects to, and we're gonna see, is the paint cracked around the welds? Is there a lot of rust around the mounting locations? Is there welds there that don't look factory? Is something bent and not lined up? And now we're gonna go around to the other side and we're gonna compare. We're gonna sit there, we're gonna tell the guy that's selling the machine to shut up for a minute, stop talking, and say, you know what? Is it cool if I just take 5 minutes without anything and do a little walk around this machine? And I just want 5 minutes to myself to take a look at this. And you're just gonna sit there. You're gonna look at everything. You're gonna look at this shock. Shocks are one of the most expensive parts of this machine. Is that tube straight? Is anything bent here? Are the shock mounts on the top there where they mount? Has it been welded? Does it look rusty? Is there something wrong with it? Is there scratches on the shock tube? You're gonna look at all the A-arms. You're gonna see if everything is okay. You're gonna look at the bottom frame mounts. Look at that. You're gonna grab the front drive shaft and you're gonna move it. Is there a ton of play in it? If there's a ton of play in it, then maybe that needs to be done. If you have all these heavy duty components, they also put stress on the rest of the machine. You're gonna ask this guy, have you upgraded the internals of this diff? Have you ever replaced the diff? Have you blown the diff? You're gonna ask him, have you replaced the drive shaft, the prop shaft? Have you replaced the hanger bearing? Is that also upgraded in heavy duty? And you're gonna see how he answers it. If this guy knows everything about it and you look at his garage and you see it's all well taken care of and he's got a nice truck and all this stuff, you can usually tell this is somebody that knows their machine, that looks after their machine. Now, if the guy says he services at the dealership and there's mud caked in everywhere and it looks like it's mud from 20 rides ago and the axles are running in a tunnel of mud, then you're gonna think to yourself, well, you know what? Buddy obviously doesn't clean this machine very well. It doesn't matter if he services it, he doesn't even care about it. When someone's selling a machine, that thing should be spotless. I don't do the best job cleaning my machine, but I don't let mud build up anywhere. And the way that looks, where there's mud, the way things are held together, that's gonna tell you how well this machine's being maintained. Does it have big, massive mud tires? If it's got big, massive mud tires, then what's he been doing with it? Well, we're gonna shift on over and we're gonna see. We're gonna come over to the back, and I'm not gonna do it in this video, but you're basically gonna look in the back of the machine here, and you're gonna ask yourself, okay, you've been mudding. You're gonna take a look here. Is that full of mud? Is it caked full of mud and the intakes everywhere? You're gonna look up here. Is there clay filling all these voids? And you're gonna see, what's it look like in the airbox? So you're gonna pop that airbox lid. It's easy to do. You're gonna pop the engine cover. You're gonna pop the airbox lid and you're gonna look in there. Is that airbox full of mud? Or is it spotless? Both are warning signs. If it's full of mud, well, you know, a little bit of splash here and there is fine, but if it's caked full of mud, then I'm gonna pull that filter off and I'm gonna look inside there. If the tube behind the filter is dirty, you're gonna put that filter back down, you're gonna say thank you for your time, and you're gonna walk away. Now, when I open that airbox on a machine with 5,000 miles on it and it's spotless, like you spit shined it, well, that's gonna make me worry too, because an airbox shouldn't be that clean. And he's gonna tell you, well, you know, I just cleaned the machine for selling it. And you're gonna see mud on other parts of the machine and you're gonna think to yourself, why would he clean the airbox so nicely, but he can't even clean the mud out of the frame or the skid plate? Well, what's he hiding? He probably took it out last weekend with the boys, drank too many beers, swamped it, ran it full of water, took it home, changed the oil, put new oil in it, cleaned out the airbox, and now he's selling it because he knows it's gonna blow up. So obviously I'm just touching on certain little things here, but things you need to worry about, things you need to think about when you're buying this machine. You're gonna do the same thing you did out back, and you're gonna out front, and you're gonna look at the back. You're gonna look, are those shocks straight? Are all the mounting locations where everything mounts to straight? Does it have any aftermarket goodies on here? Is it have a skid plate? If it doesn't have an aftermarket skid plate, you might want to go under there and take a look. Is the skid plate mangled? Is there holes in the stock skid plate? If there is, then that skid plate doesn't really protect anything. You got to make sure everything underneath there is okay. You're going to walk around, you're going to look at the cage. You're going to touch it all, you're going to see. Your hand will pick up any bumps. Has it been welded? Is the cage shifted or twisted the other way? If the cage is shifted, then it's been on its side. Even if it's just a light roll, it'll often shift the cage. And we'll show you, come on over to the other side here. This machine has obviously been on its side. You can see here that there's dents in the cage. but this cage hasn't shifted. It laid over in West Virginia, hit a rock, it bent the cage in. Does that affect the cage? Of course it affects the cage. Is it tweaked? No. To a lot of untrained eyes, maybe like, oh yeah, that cage is mangled. It's not. You're fine with stuff like this. But if that cage is shifted over the other way, then you know it's being a little more than just laid over. You're gonna look at stuff like the A-arms or the radius rods in the back. Are they straight? Are they even? Once again, if they're stock and the machine's got high mileage, then unless Buddy just replaced them with another stock arm or took his upgraded ones off and put those on, then generally it is a sign that it's probably not a machine that's been too abused. You're gonna look at everything. You're gonna see how the doors open. You're gonna make sure that the brackets on the doors aren't ripped off or bent. You're gonna go around. If it's got bumpers, you're gonna take a look at the bumpers. You're gonna see if the gaps between the top of the bumpers are even on both sides and in the middle here. Now mind you, it doesn't have to be perfect, but they should be pretty even. You're gonna make sure nothing's dented in, nothing's bent in. You're gonna pop the hood. You're gonna take a look at the coolant reservoir. There should be clean coolant in the reservoir. If it looks like it's muddy in there, or there's dirt or debris in that coolant reservoir, then that system's being contaminated. And the best way to do that is to swamp this thing and submerge it for an extended period of time. You're gonna look all under here. Is it clean? Does the person take good care of it? You're gonna look at the rad. Is the rad here in the back, is it caked full of mud? You're gonna look here, is it clean? A little bit of mud on the sides is fine, but if that rad's plugged full, then Buddy's not taking care of his machine. It's probably running hot, he's probably been thrashing it, and it's also a good way to show you what kind of conditions this machine has been living in. If there's clay and mud caked in everywhere and it's thick and half the rad isn't working, then you know this guy doesn't pay attention to detail. He beats the crap out of it, takes it home and parks it wet. What else are we gonna look at? Everything. We're gonna look at the axles. If they're stock axles or if they're aftermarket, you're gonna ask them what kind of axles are they, how long have they been in there? You're gonna ask about the diff, you're gonna ask if it makes any noises, you're gonna ask if the 4x4 engage as well. You're gonna get in this machine, you're gonna engage the 4x4, you're gonna drive it, you're gonna hit the gas a few times. You're gonna, even if you're just driving it up the road, make sure it's not clicking and clanking, stuff like that. You're gonna run through all the aftermarket accessories and you're gonna think to yourself, are they quality accessories, or did Buddy build his bumper out of like some tubing he got from like some old lawn furniture? If there's nice quality accessories on it, then usually that can tell you too, like, you know what, they're well installed, they're quality accessories, somebody's put the time and money into building this machine, it's built properly, it's built tastefully. That tells you about the previous owner. You're gonna look at the cage. If it's an aftermarket cage, for example, you're gonna ask them, why the heck's it got an aftermarket cage on it? Is it because you rolled it really bad? Or did you just upgrade it? Just because it's being rolled doesn't mean it's not a good razor. You're gonna ask him, when you rolled it, did you turn it off? He might lie to you, but it's still gonna give you an idea of what's going on. If it's got an aftermarket cage and it's perfect and all that, then you're still gonna go around and any aftermarket cage, you're gonna go around and you're gonna check that frame. You're gonna go around and you're gonna look at all the frame rails, all the mounting locations for the bumpers. You're gonna see if anything's bent or tweaked or being welded. There's no secrets here. It's just attention to detail. You don't need to be a rocket scientist. You just have to look for something that looks off. If it looks off and the guy's got a good explanation for it, he can explain to you how he fixed it and how everything is, then sure, factor that into the purchase. There's gonna be damage on a used machine. Like, you can see the dents and dings on this machine. You can see there's scratches. You can see there's rust on it. But oftentimes I'd rather see that than something that's freshly painted. Don't get me wrong, getting a machine that's been refreshed before you buy it, there's nothing wrong with that. But there's usually a reason people are doing that. It's to cover up imperfections. A can of paint doesn't add value. It just tricks your eyes. Look at the accessories, look at what they're worth. Even if you see a machine and you like certain things about it and you find a flaw and you see something's messed up, you see the A-arms need to be replaced, or you see that the radius rods need to be replaced, or Buddy, you notice there's a torn boot on one of the axles, and you tell the guy, like, look, that axle's got a torn boot, I don't know the history of it, it's gonna need a new axle, that's gonna cost me 200 bucks. The rear radius rods probably need to be replaced. You're gonna ask him, when's the wheel bearings being done? What about the brake pads? You can look in the wheels and you can see the brake pads. If he doesn't know when they're done, consider them needing to be done. If he tells you, yeah, they were done 4 rides ago, I rode Brimstone twice, I rode Windrock, and then I went to my buddy's place. They got about 200 miles on them. They're probably in pretty good condition. I used Polaris brake pads. Boom, right away that tells me this guy knows what he's doing. He's taking care of his machine. when somebody can't tell you when they changed their wheel bearings or their brake pads or how long they've had their axles in, it's either because they bought them with those and they're flipping it or something, or they really don't pay attention. If someone doesn't know when something was replaced, or if it needs to be replaced, or if it's near the end of its life cycle, then they're probably one of those guys that rides on it till it breaks on the trail, causes a lot of collateral damages, and fixes it the cheapest way possible. So you're gonna see a lot of machines, like this one's got 7,000 kilometers, it's got like 5,000 miles on it, let's say. It's 4 years old. It's been on multiple trips all over North America. It's been beat to crap, but it runs like new. Mechanically, it's solid. It's got a few dings and dents, but this thing will not leave me stranded. You could go out and look at a 2019 RZR tomorrow, and it could have way more issues than this thing. So just keep all this in mind. The price is also an identifying factor, but remember, when you sell a machine like this, you're never getting your money back in the accessories you've put into it. Arguably, you can sell a stock machine without accessories for pretty much close to the same as you can sell a machine, like the same machine, with 20 grand of accessories. Now, don't rip me apart on that. Obviously, certain accessories are worth money to the right person. And currently, with this whole pandemic going on, it's totally a seller's market. There's a shortage of these machines, and there's people selling used beaten machines for ludicrous amounts of money, way more money than they're worth. There's RZRs for sale online right now with like basically bone stock with 2,000 miles on them for $1,000 less than new. Don't be stupid. Don't go out and buy that. Even if you gotta wait, go out and buy a new machine. If you're buying used, it better be worth it. When you're buying a used machine, you're the buyer. The power is in your hands, because there's a bunch of machines you can choose from. Don't decide you want a RZR, not do any research, and then just go out and buy the first one you see. Don't be stupid. If you buy a machine and it's got all the warning signs of being beaten, well, it's probably beaten. So with that being said, I mean, I'm literally just going over some basics here. Fire it up, see if it runs right. Make sure it's not smoking. If you show up, or when you're calling them and you're gonna come see it, tell them, I don't want you starting that machine. When I get there, I don't want that RZR to be warm. You wanna start it cold. You're gonna tell them, you know, I'm coming over tomorrow, don't run it. I wanna be the first guy that starts it up tomorrow morning when I come see it. When you get there, touch the engine, touch the rad, make sure that thing hasn't been fired up. If you asked him that and he fired it up, then basically there's a reason he did that. He's hiding something. He wants to make sure you don't see the blow-by. He wants to make sure you don't see that blue cloud of smoke when you fire it up in the morning because the rings are gone because it's sucked in water. Take it for a rip. Shift it through the gears, even if it's up and down the street. If the guy doesn't want to let you drive it at all, just leave. Because you can learn a lot right away. Just driving it down the street, letting go of the wheel, see if it pulls. See if that wheel's shaking. Turn the wheel back and forth a little bit. See if there's a lot of play in it. Slop in the driveline. All those are bargaining components. It doesn't mean you don't buy it. It means there's issues you need to sort out. When you're buying a used machine, you often inherit a few headaches with it. Someone's sick of it, someone wants to move on, someone's getting something new. They're selling you their problem, generally speaking. Listen to the tranny, shift it through the gears, see if it stays in gear, see if it goes in gear. Shift it into four-wheel drive, make sure it engages properly. Hit the gas pretty hard, see if those front wheels grab. Do all that stuff. Listen to the ground. Make sure that prop shaft, the hanger bearing in the center console, it's not making noise. All those things are minor issues. If you buy a machine and it needs wheel bearings and a hanger bearing and some brake pads, who cares? It's a few $100, you're gonna have to do it anyways. It's probably best you do it for peace of mind. But you don't wanna be doing a transmission, you don't wanna be rebuilding an engine. It's different if you show up and buddy says, I rolled it, I swamped it, the engine's not running right, it runs good, but it burns oil, it smokes, and he tells you that and you still buy it, that's a risk you're taking. But it sucks when you don't know about that when you buy it, because you can cost yourself a heck of a lot of money. You can spend 10 grand on something you should have spent 5 on. A few more things you can look at. Look at the rad, make sure there's no sticks gone through it, make sure there's no punctures. Take a look at the interior, see the quality of it. Take a look at the gauge cluster, take a look at everything. Look at the mileage, make sure that when you call them, when you look at the ad and he says 3,000 miles and you show up and it's 5,000, you're like, oh yeah, it's a typo. Don't believe stuff like that. There's a lot of shady people out there selling stuff for way more than it's worth. So don't trick yourself. If you are not mechanically inclined at all, if you don't know how to hold a wrench, if you don't know the first thing about mechanics, don't buy a used RZR unless you have someone with you you absolutely trust and they know these things inside out. Spend extra money, buy the warranty, find a reputable dealer you can deal with, and take care of your machine and maintain it properly from day one. I buy used stuff all the time. I've never bought a new car, I probably never will. My last 2 RZRs have been brand new. No matter what anyone tells you, no matter what the history of a machine, we buy these things to drive them in the most terrible conditions a vehicle can live in. Remember that when you're buying used, because even your machine, when you take good care of it, gets beaten. This thing's a lot more tired than it was when I first got it, and it's a constant work in progress. These are labor-intensive machines. They're very maintenance-heavy. Anyone that complains to you says, RZRs are garbage, they're unreliable, they always break down. Generally speaking, I've had 3 of them. They've never let me down. You maintain them properly, then they last. You drive hard, you got to maintain hard. You need to do your regular routine maintenance. You need to change your fluids. You need to take care of them. If you drive the piss out of it, then you can't treat it like it's a golf cart and change the oil once a year. You really need to inspect these. Also, you need to do preventative maintenance. You don't want to let stuff break on the trail and cause collateral damage. A $60 wheel bearing can cost you $2 or $3 grand if it fails on the trail. A broken A-arm takes an axle, a tie rod, brake lines, calipers, all that stuff with it. So if something's wrong or if you know you're going to be hard on it, fix it before it breaks. Generally speaking, unless it's a severe impact or accident, you'll get warning signs. You should be inspecting these machines when you clean them. It's the best time to look at everything. And just remember, when a machine is heavily upgraded, anything you upgrade on a machine, whether it's tires, axles, driveline components, engine, power, all you're doing is you're shifting the weakest link. There's always a shear pin engineered into the system. The stock axles are janky, they're crappy, they're popsicle sticks. They break easy. It saves the diffs, it saves the trannies, it saves the driveline. Stock A-arms are soft, they break, they bend. It saves the frame. Everything you upgrade on this alters the way this vehicle handles, it alters the way it performs, and it also alters the way where things go, how it gets stressed out. So make sure that you factor that in, whether when you're upgrading the machine you bought or own, or when you're buying a different machine or a used one. You got to remember, every change to the machine has pros and cons and impacts different things. That's enough, guys. If you have specific questions, then ask. Leave a comment below. I'd be fine addressing some of these issues in more detail, or these topics in more detail. If you leave a bunch of comments with what you liked, what you want to hear more about, or specific questions, then if there's enough interest, I can make a more in-depth video where I actually sit down and I think through some of the topics. I'm just going off the top of my head here because people are constantly emailing me and asking me this question. I got an email this morning and that's what made me make this video. It's the same emails over and over again with the most basic questions, so I hope I addressed some of them here. If there's specific questions you want to do, I'll let this video kind of soak for a little while, and then we'll readdress the topic in the next little while, and we can address all the specific questions you have. So I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it gives you a little insight. I know there's a lot of people that have been on the channel for a long time and also ride hard. I know some of you guys don't ride side-by-sides, or you ride ATVs, or you don't at all, but you still enjoy the content. And I know a lot of people, tons of people, watch these videos because they want to buy a side-by-side, they want to get into the hobby, and they're trying to pick up knowledge, decide which machine to buy, and also just figure out how to buy a used machine, what the best machine to get is, how much they should spend, all that stuff. I constantly get emails from people saying, I want to get a side-by-side, and they're asking me these basic questions that to me, I'm like, oh, how do you not know that? Well, I've been doing this for over 10 years now. I've been riding side-by-sides for a long time. But I remember how much of a rookie I was when I started, and there's a learning curve. So, you know what? Consume the content that's available out there. Don't make expensive mistakes if you can avoid them. Educate yourself. Do the research you need before buying or upgrading or modifying, whether it's buying parts or buying a machine. Do the research. It's easy these days. It's your money. It's hard to make, but it's easy to spend. So make sure you use it correctly, and also make sure you buy the proper parts and support the proper businesses while you're doing that. Spending a little more sometimes and getting customer service in exchange is really worth its weight in gold. And don't be fooled by too good to be true, because it is. So make sure you follow us on Instagram, Like us on Facebook. You can check us out on TikTok. Check out some of the riding videos, some of the other content. We got how-tos, we got wicked ride videos, long ones, we got action compilations, and also check out the Shopify store. We got some cool swag out on the Shopify store. All the proceeds from these videos go directly back into creating more content for you, so you guys can enjoy it. Whether it's camera gear or just keeping the machine going, stuff like that, that's where all the proceeds go. There's not that many of them, but what we have, we put back into the channel. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope it taught you something, and we'll see you in the next video. Ride safe out there.